Imagine being picked up from school by a stranger only to realize you're trapped in a nightmare. In Out of Prison for All I Know, a young boy's quick thinking saves him from a terrifying fate. Watch till the end to see if he is still alive. This happened so long ago that some details are blurry. It wasn't like it happened yesterday. I'll do my best to fill in the smaller details. It was the last day of school, and I was in the 4th grade. 4th grade was the last year in our elementary school where kids had to be picked up by their parents. 5th graders could walk home on their own. My mom would always pick me up on the last day of school. My friend Dennis and I had a playdate planned to celebrate the last day of school. Dennis wasn't in my class this year, but we had been friends since kindergarten. He was in a different dismissal hallway from me. After school, we lined up and walked to the exit door at the end of the hall, where we waited outside with our teacher, Miss Blue. I waited for Dennis's dad to appear from the crowd of parents. Then I heard my name. Tommy! Tommy! I looked over and saw a man waving at me. He introduced himself as Dennis's uncle and said he was picking me up. I went over to Miss Blue and said, "I'm being picked up." She asked, "Where is he, sweetie?" And I pointed to Dennis's uncle, who waved at Miss Blue. Miss Blue dismissed me, and I went with the man. He led us through the crowd, talking fast and with a bit of a stutter. He walked incredibly fast, almost too fast for me to keep up with my backpack on. He explained that Dennis's dad was working later than expected, so he was driving me back. We got to his car, a dark red hatchback, and I finally realized the giant elephant in the room. Where was Dennis? Why weren't we picking him up too? The man turned to look at me in the back seat and said Dennis was already at his house. I was shy around people I didn't know, especially adults, and I wasn't one to speak my mind openly if I was confused. But I was very confused. This was making less and less sense. The whole drive, the man kept talking, telling stories of his days in elementary school, asking me questions like what sports I played and what we were learning in class. If I had to guess, we were in the car for like 10 minutes, which was long for our town, where houses were close together. My house was a 5-minute walk away from the school. We were definitely in an area I wasn't familiar with. When he parked the car in front of his house, it looked pretty normal from what I remember. He led us inside, shut the door, and locked it behind us. It was really dark inside because all the curtains were shut. It felt like nighttime in there, with only a dim lamp in the corner of the room. He then looked at me and smiled. I asked, "Where's Dennis?" And he started acting jittery and nervous. He said something like, "Oh, I think he's downstairs playing video games. Give me a second, wait here." He disappeared into a nearby room, and I heard a door open and footsteps descending into a basement. My heart was already racing. I knew I was in danger. I went to the door to quietly try to open it, but it was locked. I started to panic, yet I still held out a little hope that Dennis would be coming up those stairs. But I knew the chances were slim. I regretted entering that house. I did the only thing I could think to do. I went to the kitchen and found a phone on the wall. I picked it up and dialed 911. The first thing I said when they answered was, "Please come to this house. I've been kidnapped." They acknowledged me, but I didn't say another word. I hid the phone under a towel in the corner of the room with 911 still on the line. I hurried back to where the man left me as I heard his footsteps coming back upstairs. He called my name, saying, "Come down, Dennis is down here." Then there was a pause. He repeated my name, and when I didn't answer, he came up the stairs fully to look at me. He asked if I was okay. I felt so sick and scared. I hated myself for walking into the situation and not being wiser. I asked in a very scared voice if I could leave, and I remember the change in his face. His fake friendly smile disappeared as he realized I was no longer falling for this. He walked closer to me in a gentle manner until he was close enough to grab my wrist aggressively. He started pulling me toward the basement. I screamed and cried, and he screamed at me, "I'll let you go if you stop and behave." so I listened. I went down the stairs, and halfway down, the door slammed shut behind me, and I heard it lock. I walked fully down the stairs to this empty, unfinished basement with a concrete floor and one singular support beam in the middle of the room. There was a depressing yellow glow in the room from one exposed light bulb hanging from the ceiling. If there was a place you'd imagine kidnapped children to go, this would be it. I heard his heavy footsteps upstairs. You could hear everything in this house. I don't know what he was doing, but I heard him walking around for a while. Then he came to the basement door, opened it, and called down, asking if I was hungry. I replied no because I didn't want him going into the kitchen and seeing the missing phone. He shut the door and locked it again. I sat down there, waiting with my heart in my throat. Then I heard it. The doorbell ringing 3 times from upstairs, followed by banging sounds. Definitely the sounds of police banging on the door. I refrained from screaming until I heard the front door open, but I never heard the man's footsteps approach the door. The doorbell kept ringing, and I kept hearing the bangs. This went on for some time until I heard a really loud bang and then multiple heavy footsteps and multiple screaming voices. I started screaming for help as loud as I could at the top of the stairs, banging on the door. The door was unlocked and a police officer on the other side grabbed hold of me and hurried me outside. There were at least 3 cop cars outside. I had to tell everything to 2 of the cops outside as we waited for my parents to show up. The man from inside was brought outside and into a cop car in handcuffs, and that was the last time I ever saw him. When my parents arrived on the scene, my mom was bawling her eyes out. There'd already been a whole scene at the school as cops were called, and Dennis's dad realized what happened. This man was a work associate of Dennis's father. When he somehow learned that Dennis's dad would be picking up Dennis and me from school on the last day, he seized the opportunity to do what he did. A complete sicko. I don't know how he found out what I looked like. As I got older, I never really asked for more details because I try not to think about it. My mom went to counseling with me for months after this incident. Let's just say my parents didn't have kind words for Miss Blue for not verifying if I actually knew the person picking me up. If I didn't think to call the police before he basically threw me in that basement, I know for a fact I'd be dead right now. This was like 17 years ago. That man might be out of prison for all I know. It was junior year of high school and the last day of school. Many people cut class or left early after lunch. My friends and I were among those who left early. It was a stormy, dark day. Originally, we planned to hit the beach, but the weather canceled that plan. So, we decided to do something else. There was an abandoned elementary school in town that hadn't been used for about 10 years. It was set to be torn down by the end of the year. Wanting to do something fun on the last day of school, we agreed to break into the building and explore. There were no cameras, and on a stormy day, no one would be outside monitoring the place. After lunch, we all left. Our friend Eddie had a car, so he drove us to the abandoned school. The school was in a neighborhood, not on any main roads. There was a back parking lot covered by overgrown bushes and trees on one side and the school's walls on the other sides. It was a perfect spot to park and go unnoticed. The place wasn't boarded up, just locked. Eddie had a baseball bat in his trunk. He took it out and smashed one of the windows. I was so nervous that even through the pouring rain, someone might hear the smashing sound. We all watched and nervously laughed as Eddie broke the window. After a few good swings, he pushed away the glass stuck to the frame and waved us over. We climbed through the window one by one. The window we climbed through was for a classroom. A lot of stuff was still in the room, including desks and decorations on the walls. Based on the decorations, it looked like we were in a 4th or 5th grade classroom. It was surreal to be inside what was once an active classroom, now cold, dark, and abandoned. The sounds of thunder and lightning outside added to the surreal feeling. There were no lights on in the building. The power was likely cut. We anticipated this and used the flashlights on our phones. Even without them, it wasn't completely dark as some light crept in through the windows and doors. We started exploring, going from room to room. Each classroom was full of desks and chairs that hadn't been used in probably a decade. We were all in the same classroom when we heard a sound echo down the hallway. We went silent and turned off our lights. After a flash of lightning, we decided it was probably nothing and continued exploring. As we walked, our wet shoes squeaked on the floors, making it impossible to sneak around. A lot of things in the school were visibly decaying. As we neared the corner of the hall, I turned around and saw something sticking out from a classroom doorway. I asked my friends to look, and when we all pointed our flashlights toward the door, whatever we saw retracted into the classroom. We quietly muttered, "Oh no," and started running down the intersecting hallway. We stopped when we were far enough away and realized we were in the kindergarten wing. Then we heard another sound echo down the hallway. It seemed we weren't alone, but who could be there? The place was locked up and completely dark. The sound scared us into the first classroom we could find, and we shut the door. It was indeed a kindergarten classroom. We waited in silence with our flashlights off, concerned we might get in trouble. The rain was still coming down hard, and there was still thunder and lightning crashing every 20 seconds or so. Suddenly, the classroom door clicked open, and someone pushed it, making it creak eerily. We didn't see anyone at the doorway, and the hallway was almost pitch black. We tried to stay quiet. Slowly, something appeared through the doorway. A head. When there was another flash of lightning, we saw what it was. It was a person's head looking into the classroom directly at us. I started apologizing, saying we were leaving. The person at the doorway didn't move, just stared at us lifelessly. Eddie asked, "Do you work here?" No response. Eddie handed me the bat as he struggled to unlock one of the windows. He slid it open just enough to crawl through. He went out first, then my other two friends, and I was last. Before I crawled out, I looked back one more time at the head in the doorway. I crawled through as quickly as I could, fearing the person would grab my legs. Once I was out, I ran to catch up with my friends who were already running back to Eddie's car. We drove out of there in a hurry and never looked back. The building was torn down later that year and has since been turned into a park. We never got in trouble for breaking in. To this day, we have no idea if that was some kind of worker or just a random person. Either way, it was extremely creepy behavior on their part.